Hi folks, David Henson here of HensonFuerst Attorneys with offices in Raleigh, Rocky Mount, Creedmoor, and Boone, North Carolina. Over the last 10 years or so, lawyers handling large workers' compensation cases have had to tangle with a new legal mess called Medicare Set Asides. These Medicare Set Asides are complicated things, and I thought I would take some time today to discuss them with you. So, let's start at the beginning. What is a Medicare Set Aside? In short, it's an amount of money that has to be allocated out of a settlement. This happens when 1. The client is expected to incur future medical bills that are related to an injury case. 2. The client is already receiving Medicare or can reasonably be expected to receive Medicare in the next 18 months. And 3. The amount of the settlement exceeds a certain threshold amount set by Medicare. When these set-asides were first created, they originally only applied to workers' compensation cases. But now Medicare has begun expanding their reach and is indicating that they'll be necessary in personal injury cases as well. So, I'll talk today about everything in the context of workers' compensation. But as these set-asides are expanded to personal injury cases, the concepts will basically be the same. But first, let's look at the good old days of how settlements used to be done before all this mess started. Prior to these set-asides, when a disabled worker settled his or her case, the workers' compensation company would pay essentially on two things. First, it would pay the worker for the permanency rating or disability. Second, it would pay for the value of the future medical bills that the client was likely to incur. As a part of this value, it was assumed that the worker would receive Social Security disability benefits at some point in the future and hence use their Medicare coverage for any future treatment needs. In the 1990s, however, as the Medicare system started having greater and greater financial strains, Medicare became concerned about how workers' compensation insurance companies were effectively shifting the burden of future medical expenses onto the Medicare system. Hence, there was legislative and procedural reform, and these Medicare set-asides were created to help offset some of the costs to the government. So, how is the amount of the set-aside determined? Well, it's carefully calculated by life care planners or by outside companies hired by insurance carriers. They take into account the total amount of all future medical care that the insurance carrier would be responsible for if the case didn't settle. Once the case is settled, this lump sum amount is then required to be placed into a separate interest-bearing account for the sole purpose of paying for treatment that was caused by the injury. This account is depleted by the injured person dollar for dollar based on what Medicare would have had to pay if this account had not been there. Once the injured worker can show Medicare that he or she has properly exhausted that account, they can then seek to have Medicare cover the additional costs of their injuries. Or, to think of it another way, a Medicare set-aside is like a deductible for your Medicare card. There's a certain amount that you have to spend down each year. Above and beyond that, Medicare will pay for treatment even if it's related to your accident. As an injured worker, considering the settlement of your workers' compensation claim, you need to know a few more things. First, Medicare set-asides are not always needed, even if you have future treatment needs. It depends on a number of factors, such as the future care needed and the amount of your settlement. Second, be aware that you don't always have to settle the future medical portions of your workers' compensation case. Sometimes we're able to negotiate with the insurance carrier to pay only the indemnity or weekly check portion of your case, but leave open the future medical portion. This will sidestep the need for the Medicare set-aside. Finally, you should know that there are many treatment costs that Medicare will not cover, but which the workers' compensation insurance company would have covered. Prescription drug costs are a big example. As such, when the calculations are being made, it's important to separate out these costs from the set-aside. This allows you, the client, to preserve more of your settlement dollars. Now, as I said before, so far these set-asides have only been required in workers' compensation cases, but we are now facing the prospect of having to do them in personal injury cases as well. The process is slightly different in personal injury cases, but the concepts are basically the same. Either way, these are complicated issues. If you've been severely injured in a personal injury or workers' compensation case, and you are either currently receiving Medicare or are likely to receive Medicare in the next 18 months, then you need to be mindful of these set-asides. The absolutely best way to navigate these complicated legal waters is to have an experienced lawyer by your side. This is David Henson with HensonFuerst Attorneys. For more information, feel free to visit our website at lawmed.com/workers compensation. If you have questions, we have answers.